Hi guys! In this section we're going to be solving quadratic equations, and our first method that we're going to be talking about is factoring. Okay, so if you are asked to solve an equation by factoring, you're going to follow these steps. Okay, so step 1, you're going to make sure that your equation is set equal to 0. Okay, this is the same thing as putting it in standard form. Okay, so when you set your equation equal to 0, it should resemble something like this. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay. Step 2, you're going to factor the equation. So all of those methods that we learned to factor before, like difference of two squares, sum and difference of cubes, taking out the GCF, all of those will come into play in the second step. Then in step 3, you're going to set each one of your factors equal to 0. And then step 4, you're going to solve. Okay. So let's work through some examples. All right, so this first one says solve by factoring. So we have x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0. Okay, so step 1 was to make sure that our equation was set equal to 0. Check it. It is. We have 0 on one side of the equation, so we're good to go. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to factor it. Okay, so remember, you're going to walk yourself through those steps of factoring when we learned that previously. So when we look at this equation, this has 3 terms. Okay, it's a trinomial, and its leading coefficient is 1. Okay, so that means when we go to factor it, we're going to look at the constant term that's in the back, which is 10. Okay, we're going to take the factors of 10, and our goal is, can we get factors that are going to give us the middle term, which for this problem is going to be 7. So we're going to take 10. The factors of 10, remember, factors are 2 different pieces that multiply together to give you what you want. So the factors of 10 are 1 and 10, 2 and 5. Okay. Now of those pairs, could you use one of them to get a 7? Yep, the 2 and the 5. Okay. Now the 7 needs to be positive, so that means the sign on my 2 and the sign on my 5 both need to be positive. Okay. So we're going to take those factors and we're going to rewrite the center term. Okay. So that's going to give us, well, we're going to split it into factors. We don't need to rewrite the center term. So we're going to split it into 2 factors. And the front of each one of those is going to be x, which is our variable in the problem. I'm going to put plus 2 in one and plus 5 in the other. Okay. Remember, where you put the 2 and the 5 doesn't matter. I could have them flip-flopped and get the same answer. Okay. Now we've completely factored it. So we set our equation equal to 0. We factored it. Step 3 was to set each one of our factors equal to 0. So that means I'm going to have x plus 2 equals 0 and x plus 5 equals 0. And the last step said to solve. So to solve means I need to get x isolated or by itself. So in the first one, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. In the second one, I'm going to subtract 5. So my 2 answers are x equals negative 2 and x equals negative 5. Cool. All right, let's try another example. Okay, same direction, solve by factoring. Okay, so we're going to walk ourselves through those same steps we did before. So step 1 was to make sure that your equation is set equal to 0. It is. Then we see that we have a trinomial again, okay, whose leading coefficient is 1. So we're going to look at the factors of our constant term. And our constant term this time is 63. So we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply together to give us 63. But that's also going to give us the center coefficient, which is negative 2. So I'm going to list the factors of 63. So that's 1 and 63, 3 and 21, and 7 and 9. Okay. Now of those pairs, we need to see if there's one that gives me a 2. There is, the 7 and the 9. Okay. I need a negative 2 for my middle term. So that means the 9 needs to be negative and the 7 needs to be positive. Okay. So I'm going to take those factors and I'm going to use them to break up my polynomial. So I'm going to split them into 2 factors. Okay. Your variable is going to go in the front. For this problem, it's still x. And I'm going to put positive 7 in one parentheses and negative 9 in the other. Okay. Now that it's completely factored, the third step is to set each one of our factors equal to 0. So I have x plus 7 equals 0, x minus 9 equals 0. And step 4 is to solve. So I'm going to subtract 7 and add 9. So my two answers are x equals negative 7 and x equals 9. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, so if you want to, you guys can pause the video here to see if you guys get the same answer that I get, and then come back and check to see if you're correct. Okay, all right, so let's follow our same steps. So step 1 said to set our quadratic equal to 0. It is. We have a trinomial again, okay, and whose leading coefficient is 1. So that means we're going to find the factors of 12 that give us the center term. So I need to list out the factors of 12, which is 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. And I need a pair that's going to give me negative 8, which is the middle term. Well, that's going to be 2 and 6. Okay. And I need a negative 8. So the only way I'm going to get that is if both the 2 and the 6 are both negative. So I'm going to take those factors and rewrite my quadratic. I'm going to make 2 sets of parentheses. X is going to go in the front of each of them again because that's my variable. Then negative 2 is going to go in one and negative 6 in the other. Now step 3, remember, is to set each one of your factors equal to 0. And then step 4 is to solve. So for the first one, I'm going to add 2. And for the second one, I'm going to add 6. So my two answers for this problem is x equals 2 and x equals 6. Cool?